This is the Dynasty Market Report, where we look at a specific pick or player and we track how is the market treating this asset. Everyone understands you should be trading in fantasy football, and everyone understands you want to buy low, sell high. But how do you know what is low and what is high? The best way to do that is track the market. How are people actually trading these assets? So today we're going to figure that out with TreVeyon Henderson, running back for the New England Patriots, wrapping up his rookie season this weekend in the Super Bowl. Let's take a look at how the market's moving around him and what dynasty managers are doing with this player. So let's jump into his player value, and we find this on Keep Trade Cut, a site that people use a lot for a trade calculator. I primarily use it for determining how do dynasty managers view a specific pick or player. Throughout the year, people are logging into this site and it is asking them, rank 3 players, keep, trade, cut. Which one do you want on your team? And that's what it's pretty strong for tracking rankings of the community. So if we look at the player value or ranking for TreVeyon Henderson throughout the year, going into the year, pretty high. He's a highly talented running back. He had a really good preseason, and people were expecting him to be the lead option sooner rather than later for the Patriots. And as we go through the year, once we start getting into September, so here we are early October, it's dipped. He was not the guy that people thought he was in October. In the preseason, I was saying you might have to wait until October to see those results. And you had to wait longer for TreVeyon Henderson. Now that's normal for rookies to have to wait, but we didn't really see him being heavily utilized until Rhamondre Stevenson got injured. And right around here, we see that his value shoots right up. So once TreVeyon Henderson was getting lead back work, people are right back in because the numbers were excellent. If you look at his total scoring on the year, he's running back 21. But if you're just looking at the second half, once things started to change after Rhamondre Stevenson missed some time and Henderson had huge games, he's a top 12 running back in the second half of the year. I think the part that people are leaving out, and what I just left out in that statement, was when Rhamondre came back, he was back to being a big part of this offense. If you look at player blurbs around TreVeyon Henderson through the playoffs, it's things like Henderson barely used against the Broncos in the championship game. Like Rhamondre Stevenson still has a role on this team. And if you look at his contract, Rhamondre Stevenson is likely going to be on the Patriots next year. Now, during the season, there was a comment while I was live streaming fantasy football questions, and someone said, man, why aren't the Patriots using TreVeyon Henderson? They would win so much more if they did. And I think we have to pause and look at the reality of they're in the Super Bowl. There isn't much more winning, and they might know more than we do. So going into next year, I'm expecting Rhamondre to have a role, and I'm expecting this value here to be a little bit shaky. We may see some dips down here if we're not getting immediate performance out of TreVeyon at the start of next year. I think people are going to decide in this offseason that, well, Rhamondre he'll take on a lesser role. Surely it's going to just be TreVeyon Henderson with Rhamondre like 30% of the snaps. And I don't know that that's what we're going to see. So if we look at the rankings in the community, he's still really highly thought of. Running back 7, right here in this mix, just behind Jonathan Taylor, behind Omari and Hampton, and then it's kind of a tier break there, with Taylor, Henderson, and Hampton being comfortably ahead, and then some of these more stud options like Genty, where people still really believe in Genty. And then the top 3 options, Bijan, Gibbs, and Achane. And once we get Jeremiah Love in the mix, depending on where he's drafted, he'll be right in this range. So are there options to tier up from TreVeyon Henderson or tier down? Let's start with, I think I have a tier down first. If I could move TreVeyon Henderson and just a third and get Breece Hall and a first, like a 107, it would have to be one of these pick ranges where I feel pretty comfortable that there's going to be someone solid there. So if I can count out 5 or 6 options in this year's rookie draft, then that's the type of pick that I'm looking for. So if I could get Jeremiah Love, there's 3 great wide receivers that come to mind, Tate, Tyson, Lemon, Fernando Mendoza, and then we're looking at Kenyon Sadiq, who's likely to go pretty early in the draft at tight end. And then another wide receiver like Denzel Boston gets us up to 7. So we're hoping that someone appears there into that range before we start to hit a tier break in rookies this year. If I can get into that range and pick up Breece Hall, who's just a year and a half younger and also has excellent talent, I could be okay with doing a down tier like that. Now, I don't know that you're going to get this move in your league, but I would be open to it. It's an option of what we're looking at. It's not something I'm champing at the bit to do. It seems pretty even to me. And I could see myself doing the other side as well. If we're looking to tier up, there's not that many options. If you're running back 7, that means there's really only 6 other options, and some of them are in the same tier as you. So getting into the top tier, sending TreVeyon Henderson with DK Metcalf, it'll light up a calculator for Devon Achane. And this is one that I feel is pretty even, to the point where I'm not sure you're going to get a deal like this in a lot of leagues. Does the Achane owner want to bring in someone like DK Metcalf? You would need them to want a guy like that. You could also plug in someone like a Jordan Addison here in that same range. But again, it's really just, does the Achane owner believe in these receivers that have had their value diminished recently? If they don't, you're not going to get a trade like that through. If we're looking for a slightly higher up tier, I pulled up Henderson, pairing him with Jameson Williams, a more valuable receiver to get up into the Jahmyr Gibbs range. I think I'm just a little bit lower on Gibbs and a little bit higher on Achane, where I feel like this is still pretty even. It's not going to light up the calculator. People are going to want more for Gibbs, but this is about as much as I would move if I'm up tiering to Gibbs. So I probably would just be holding TreVeyon Henderson. While he might still have some shaky value, the skills are there. Like Ramondre is still going to have a role, but I think within a couple years, we can look at Jahmyr Gibbs as an example. 3 years in is when David Montgomery finally started to see his role starting to get diminished. And now going forward is likely to be more of Gibbs and then maybe someone else in a pretty small role. And that might be a similar career path for TreVeyon Henderson, where Ramondre is there for 1 to 2, not possibly a third year, and then maybe someone else is in there filling in a smaller role, with Henderson being the lead back. So I don't know that I want to move off of that. Let's take a look at some real trades that have happened, though, and talk about how we feel about those. So first one, TreVeyon Henderson for Saquon Barkley. I'm just going to go with Henderson. In the second half of the year, Henderson was on that borderline RB1, top 12 range. Saquon Barkley finishes within that range and is in the tail end of his career. It's possible we get a Saquon Barkley renaissance year or two, but I think there's more value just in TreVeyon Henderson going forward, and very similar production going forward, and then just more of it, more years. So I'm comfortably taking the Henderson side there. If we're looking at a down tier from a running back also drafted last year, Hampton for Henderson, the 203 and 205. I really like Omari and Hampton with Mike McDaniels joining the Chargers. Would I be doing a deal like this? You're taking on work. I don't know that I want the 203 and 205. Like we were just talking about with a previous trade, saying I kind of want to get into that 107-ish range right now in early February. Before we know which rookies are drafted where and how high, I can really only name about 7 to 8 guys that I'm excited about. So if I can get into that range with the 203 and 205, I could be okay with down tiering from Hampton to Henderson, because I like Henderson a lot, and then I get that extra pick. If we're looking at kind of a different or a very similar option here, Henderson and the 110 for Ashton Genty. It feels very similar to kind of what we're getting here with Hampton down tiering to Henderson and getting picks, Genty down tiering to Henderson and getting the 110. I feel pretty similarly, where I might just go with Genty and trust in the new coaching staff coming in there. But this is not a world-breaking trade. I would call this pretty even. If this came across in a league I'm in, I'm not really gonna think too much about it. This is one that I would push through. It's not really at all in within the range of anyone really being upset about it. Here's another one that seems pretty interesting. TreVeyon Henderson for the 102, Luther Burden for the 105. Looking at a deal like this, that's how I would start to break it down. Henderson and Burden for the 102 and 105. Is Henderson more valuable than the 102? Probably a little bit. We've seen this rookie succeed. I'll usually give the edge to a player that I've seen the success from rather than just pure potential. But then am I trading Luther Burden for the 105? I would much rather have the 105 than Luther Burden. So if I could do this deal where I'm saying I move on from a player where I saw him do it for just more potential, like the #1 wide receiver in this draft. I don't know that we're going to hit on the #1 wide receiver, but I'm also probably going to get the number 3 wide receiver or a good quarterback. So I may do this 102 and 105 in the swap here. But I think that says more about Luther Burden and his value compared to the 105 than it does with Henderson compared to the 102. Here's a deal where if you could get TreVeyon Henderson for this, like, do it every single time. A 27 first, it doesn't say which one it is. And if you can get someone to believe that it's an early first and you're trading an early first and getting a great player now, that makes that first not an early first. So trading a 27 first, Jalen Polk and Trey Tucker, whatever someone thinks this first is, I mean, maybe you're trading it from someone else's team who's been pretty bad, and now you're saying like, hey, here, I'll pass it along to you. If you're trading your own first and bringing in TreVeyon Henderson, you have to assume that first is going to become a slightly worse because you're getting in such a good player. About the other players in the deal, Trey Tucker, Jalen Polk, those are both cuttable tier options for me. So this is really just Henderson for a 27 first in my mind, or I wouldn't think of this that much differently than Henderson for a 27 first, and I would take Henderson there. A 27 first and the 106 for Henderson and Metcalf. This I'm feeling the Henderson side, or it's very, very even. We pulled up DK Metcalf saying, I probably don't want to give a first for him. Am I reading this right? Or am I having a brain fart? 27 for, if I go 27 first for Metcalf, that's a no. I want the first. If I go TreVeyon Henderson for the 106, that's a no. I want Henderson, but I probably lean the Henderson side. Let's take a look at a bigger one as an up tier. If you're using Ladd McConkey, TreVeyon Henderson, and some picks to get to Justin Jefferson, this one I feel like is just going to value Ladd McConkey a little bit lowly. Or if I have Justin Jefferson, would I make this swap? I could. I could take McConkey and Henderson and get a bounce back from McConkey, bring in Henderson. These extra picks are not quite enough to really sweeten that, a 27 second and a 28 third. I'm going to call this one pretty even. And really, it's just the value of where I think Ladd McConkey can get back to. That is the difference maker for me on this. TreVeyon Henderson kind of acting as, if we say like Justin Jefferson's worth between closer to 3 firsts than 4, and we have 2 firsts in Henderson, and then 1+ in Ladd, like the package side has more value on paper, but I think we'll get a bounce back from Justin Jefferson. So that this one, I feel like you're not really buying low on Justin Jefferson. You're kind of paying a little bit over the price. You're sort of getting in low, because if this was Jamar Chase, we would say no. We would say this package is not enough. And Justin Jefferson still has that upside. Let's take a look at 1 or 2 more. Here, Henderson for Tajay Spears, 107 and 205. This one, I'm taking Henderson. If you can get a package like this with your 107 and a second pick, and then a guy that probably has flex level value for 1 or 2 more years, like final flex, like you're looking at your Dynasty lineup and saying, do I start him this week level of flex with Tajay Spears? Give me Henderson there. And then Jalen Coker, Dylan Sampson, and TreVeyon Henderson. This is just a worse version of that. Jalen Coker is probably swappable for the 205, and I might just take the pick. 107 for 107, and then Sampson for Spears. We might not see Dylan Sampson. I mean, Dylan Sampson is just the future Tajay Spears. He's a couple years younger, but he's going to be in that similar range of, is he startable week to week? He'll be startable some weeks, but I would rather just take this package and pay up whatever extra value bonus it says this side has, and just overpay for TreVeyon Henderson, because you're not really using that real of value with Sampson Coker to go from the 107 to TreVeyon Henderson. And that is going to bring us to the end here. If there is a specific player you would like to see covered in a video like this, let me know in the comments. We plan these out a couple days ahead, but we've got the whole next week ready to have names filled in. So let me know in the comments. And if this has helped you make a trade or avoid a trade, let me know with a like, a subscribe. Thank you very much for getting to the end here, and I will see you in the next one.